This video is brought to you by Straightgoods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit Straightgoods.ca.
In the sponsorship scandal, the Liberals may have broken every rule in the book, but it seems that Conservatives have borrowed a whole new book, a book of dirty tricks from their American cousins, and in doing so, they have once again lowered the bar of ethical standards, and I argue undermined the integrity of our electoral institutions in a way that is unprecedented in Canadian politics. In many ways, we were caught flat-footed and unawares by these dirty tricks. Voter suppression techniques are commonplace in the United States, with high-priced consulting firms specializing in sabotaging elections, but I don't think anybody really expected a Canadian political party to stoop so low, and we didn't take necessary steps to protect ourselves from it. This could mean the end of the age of innocence in Canadian electoral campaigns. Elections Canada stated that these phony phone calls deliberately disrupted the voting process. Now, how is this different from a bunch of goons with clubs blocking the door to a voter station, as we've seen in third world countries or the Deep South in the United States? Because the net effect is the same. You are sabotaging the ability of people to exercise their democratic right to cast their ballot in a federal election. In my view, there can be no more serious crime nor a more heinous affront to democracy. Too many brave Canadians died fighting for the right to have fair and clean and free elections in this country to let this go unchallenged at the highest possible order. My father didn't go to war to fight for democracy only to have some sleazy punk in an American-style black ops department run roughshod over it and undermine its integrity. Now, the boys in the black ops department will call it voter suppression techniques to try and give it some semblance of legitimacy, but in my view, there is nothing legitimate about cheating, and there never will be. We want the Conservatives to fix health care, not elections. We want the Conservatives to fix pensions, not elections. And we want the Conservatives to fix our crumbling infrastructure, not fix elections. When you consider the millions of dollars of overspending due to the in-and-out electoral fraud, and now the hundreds of thousands of phony phone calls by the RAC9 rascals, it makes you wonder about the legitimacy of the Conservatives' 39% majority mandate. Did they really win that last federal election? Or did they achieve their razor-thin majority by cheating? The public needs to know, because there is a serious matter of public interest that far exceeds the success or failure of any one political party. Cheating in an election fuels the cynicism of an already jaded electorate, and if the public loses even more confidence in their electoral system, they will be even less likely to come out and vote, and the integrity of our system is irreparably harmed. And in my view, nothing could be more serious. There were those who tried to say that Watergate was just a couple of snoopy plumbers, but those journalists who pressed on found it was much more than that. I predict the RAC9 will become the Conservative Party's Groupe Action, and I predict that we will find that the sheer magnitude and audacity of the RAC9 rascals will be enough to make Richard Nixon blush. And I predict it will hang around the neck of the Prime Minister like an albatross. And I wonder if Justice Gomery is still available, because I think we need his services once again if we are going to arrest this serious bastardization of our electoral system. So who are the masterminds of the RAC9 rascals' robocalls of deceit into NDP-held swing ridings? Surely these young punks didn't unilaterally construct this massive conspiracy to defraud the electoral system and initiate hundreds of thousands of phone calls into NDP swing ridings. So you start by asking the logical questions on motive and opportunity. Who would stand to gain from misleading NDP and Liberal voters in swing ridings? What is the full nature and extent of the relationship between the Conservative Central Campaign and the RAC9 Inc. of Matt Meyer? How much did they pay him, and why is some of the information on invoices to the Conservative Central Campaign blacked out? Who drafted the customized script to lie to NDP and Liberal voters about the whereabouts of their voting stations? We now know that many Conservative campaigns paid RAC9's robocalling, including the riding associations of 3 cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister. And they contributed money to the Central Campaign for the express purpose of purchasing robocall services from RAC9. Who organized it? The architects of the Conservative election campaign have all been appointed to the Senate. They're easy to find, but they're tough to nail down due to the privilege of members of Parliament. Is this why they got appointed to the Senate? I mean, like Berlusconi hiding behind his parliamentary inviolability? We want the tough-on-crime party to get tough on the criminals in their own organization who would flagrantly defy the Elections Act and undermine that most fundamental freedom that citizens in a democracy enjoy, the right to cast their ballot in a free and fair election campaign. Well, I don't know what kind of research the Liberals have done, but if they fail to find any kind of a smoking gun, they're not noticing or taking note of at least 2 violations, one to the Elections Act and one to the Criminal Code of impersonating an officer for express purposes of misleading people and interfering with their right to vote. At the very least, it's clear that something illegal took place here, and at the very least, the NDP believes that charges should be laid. Now, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to connect the dots as to who would benefit from misleading both Liberal and NDP voters about where to go to vote on Election Day. And even one of the Conservative operatives in Guelph knew exactly who to phone to caution that there's something going on in the riding. He phoned the cell phone of Matt Meyer. You know? It's outrageous. It's disturbing. It's as offensive as it can possibly be if you care a damn about the integrity of our electoral system. I know the argument from the Conservatives is going to be, you know, in those ridings where it's proven that we tried to screw people out of voting, you know, we didn't succeed anyways. But there's no harm, no foul is not a defense for breaking the law. And there's at least one, maybe 2, South Shore St. Margaret, my former colleague Gordon Earl lost by a very small number. And Edmonton East, Ray Martin was a targeted seat in a swing riding where we had a very good chance of winning. We don't know the cumulative effect of the vote rigging that went on. First, the overspending on advertising with the In-N-Out scandal, and now this conspiracy to undermine the integrity of a person's right to vote. Combine those 2 things together, in God knows how many ridings across the country, facts as we know them to date would indicate a well-orchestrated, widespread conspiracy from the top, not some rogue punk out in the boondocks who woke up one morning and said, let's implement this widespread nationwide conspiracy with hundreds of thousands of phone calls. It's just not plausible. And plus there's the disturbing connections between the Central campaign and the long established relationship with RAC 9, and not the least of which is this mysterious knowledge of the Conservative operative in Guelph when they started to get complaints about mischief calls going on. Who does he call? He didn't even call the Central campaign. He called Matt Meyer personally to advise them that Liberals are getting misleading phone calls. I don't know. It's not up to us to prove it, but it sure smells rotten. The integrity of the electoral system is based on stipulating ourselves to compliance with transparency rules. So we know who donates money, we know how that money is spent. I hope the commissioner of elections, the Canadian elections, has the authority to compel the production of those papers. If not, we have to go further and let the RCMP do it. And ultimately, it may come to the time where there has to be a full public inquiry to investigate the depth and the breadth of what looks to be the largest electoral fraud in Canadian history. We only have 7 concrete examples, but we're still investigating for more. But Parkdale Hyde Park, Peggy Nash's riding, Ottawa Centre, Paul Dewar's riding, Windsor to Tecumseh, Joe Martin's riding, Sudbury, Glenn Thibault's riding, Edmonton East, Ray Martin's riding, Davenport, Andrew Cash's riding, Thunder Bay, Superior North, the riding of Bruce Heyer, and South Shore, St. Margaret, the riding, or what should have been the riding of my former colleague Gordon Earl. That's 2, 4, 6, 8 actually. We don't know the full depth and breadth. I just learned now as I'm sitting here of my colleague information from Robert regarding a Quebec riding held by the Bloc Québécois. But it's a classic American Republican tactic. We know the Conservatives send their guys down there for training. I mean, there's consultants in the States that specialize in this. Voter suppression, this is only one of their tactics. And the Democrats in the United States have 1-800 numbers and lawyers standing by because of the proliferation of complaints that come out in every election campaign because the Republicans use this voter suppression tactics. It's old school in the States. We thought we were immune here. And as I say, maybe the age of innocence is over for Canadian electoral politics. Maybe of the 8 that I read, only 2 are ones that we failed to win. Edmonton East with Ray Martin and South Shore St. Margaret with Gordon Earl. I don't have the margins by which we lost those with me today, but we don't know the effect that this had, and we don't know if there was 100,000 calls went in there and 50,000 people went to the wrong polling station. We will never know. Well, we may know with a full public inquiry, but at this point in time, all we know is that we were victimized. This is an affront to democracy. They cheated in the most egregious way.
Just wondering if electoral fraud is found to have made a difference in one of these ridings that you had lost. Do you know if there are any rules in Elections Canada that would allow them to call a by-election? Or is it just left up to the MP who won?
Well, those are the very questions that we've been wrestling with. I mean, what is your avenue of recourse? It's a small consolation if 1 or 10 or 50 Conservative operatives got charged, tried, and convicted. If we still lost the damn seat and we lost the damn election, I don't know. Who do you appeal to? Is the election null and void? It's a constitutional question. I mean, Twitterverse last night was speculating, oh, we go to the Governor General and start all over again. I don't think that's an option, so I can't answer that. And all I know is that it's a razor-thin majority. The NDP won 103 seats, but we finished second in 121 other seats, some by very slim margins. We don't know how many of those were tampered with by cheating. It could have been a completely different outcome in this federal election.